Hey guys, this is Nishant and welcome to All About Chess. In this video, we will discuss about one of the most common responses for black after white's e4, that is the Caro Kann defense. This defense is usually considered as a bit less aggressive but a more solid approach to e4 when compared to the Sicilian defense. Now, before we move any further, I'd like to just mention that I won't be covering this defense in much detail, but rather I'd like to show the main line and different possible variations which can occur while playing this defense. After the move e4, the Caro Kann defense starts with the move c6. At first sight, this move might seem a bit weird because the c6 pawn is in fact blocking the knight's most natural development square, that is c6. But the point is to play d5 on the second move, attacking the center and achieving a solid pawn structure. White continues with d4. We play d5, and here white has a few options. He can go e5, he can capture on d5, or to play knight c3. Let's say white captures on d5. We take back, bishop to d3, knight to f6, knight to f3, and bishop to c4, pinning the knight. h3, bishop back, c3, e6, bishop to f4, bishop to d6, captures, castles, and black castles. And let's say white plays the move d2. Here black can continue development with the move knight to c6, rook to c8, and slowly start expanding on the queen side. This position is fairly equal and is quite comfortable to play as black. In the exchange variation of the Caro Kann defense, after white takes on d5 and black takes back, white, instead of playing the move bishop to d3, he can try the move c4, which is an aggressive move immediately striking in the center. After the move pawn to c4, black can respond with knight f6, knight to c3, pawn to e6, knight f3, and bishop to b4, pinning the piece. Here white captures on d5 and we take back with the knight. It is important to note that taking back with the pawn doesn't really help because we ruin our pawn structure and also create an isolated pawn for ourselves. And taking back with the knight also increases the pressure on the pinned piece. So anyways, after black recaptures with the knight, white plays bishop to d2, black castles, white plays a3 and bishop back to e7. It is important to note that after a3, taking on c3 doesn't really help because we're actually helping white to reinforce the center and white is already better. So black moves back to e7, bishop to e2, knight c6, and white castles. And here white has few options. He can play rook to e1, bring this rook to the open file, and similarly black has a different idea this time. He can push the pawn to b6, bring this bishop to the long diagonal, shift this bishop over to f6, and if any trade happens in the center, white is always ready to capture the queen. Here on move 3, instead of capturing on d5, let's say white plays the move knight to c3, keeping the tensions in the central squares. Here white captures the pawn, knight takes, bishop to f5, knight back, and bishop back. This is known as the classical variation of the Caro Kann defense. Here white continues with the move knight to f3, black plays knight to d7, bishop to d3, bishop trades, queen takes, knight to f6, castles, e6, bishop to f4, bishop to e7, and say rook to e1 after black castles. Here in this position, white has a few options. He can go pawn to c4, bring his rooks to the open file, and it's safe to say that white is a bit better in this position because of the extra space in the center. But black also has a few options. He can swing his queen over to the b6 square, putting some pressure on these pawns. If black manages to activate his pieces, and also due to his very solid pawn structure, I think black is doing quite well in this position. In this position, after black takes on e4 and white takes back, instead of going into the classical variation, black can try this move, knight to f6, immediately challenging the white knight in the center. Now white takes on f6 and we recapture with the e-pawn. Now this might seem a bit counterintuitive because we are actually capturing away from the center, but if white manages to start an attack against the black king, this pawn will be really helpful in the defense. For example, this pawn goes to f5, this comes to g6, bishop to g7, castles, and after bishop to e6, the light squares are covered, the dark squares are covered, and this pawn structure is extremely safe for the black king. This position, after white takes on f6, black can try this super aggressive move with g takes f6. This is called as the Bronstein Larsen variation of the Caro Kann Defense, and this is quite a move because now black is hoping for a quick attack against the white king, and after trading these dark square bishops, black will castle alongside, and that's quite a good game for black. And it's also important to note that trading these dark square bishops before castling long is very important because these dark squares are no longer a threat for the black king, and hopefully we can carry out the attack without any worries. In this position, white, instead of taking on d5 or playing the move knight c3, white can actually push the pawn to e5, which is known as the advanced variation of the Caro Kann Defense. Here black has two main options. One is to go bishop f5 or to play the move c5. Let's say black plays the move c5, white can continue with c3, knight c6, knight f3, and bishop to g4, pinning the white knight. And let's say white plays the move bishop to e2, black can actually equalize with this combination after captures, trades on the d file, and pawn to e6. This is a totally equal position for both sides, and let's say white castles, this knight is going to come to f7, and e7 to f5, or e7 to g6, and this bishop goes to e7 and then castles. And again, this is quite a comfortable position to play as black. Coming back to this position, instead of the move c5, if black opts to go for the move bishop to f5, this is known as the short variation after knight to f3. Here black can continue with the move pawn to e6, bishop to e2, pawn to c5, pawn to c3, knight to c6, castles, takes, and after knight to e7, white has so many options here. He can come to c3, he can put the knight to d2, or even play bishop to e3, and so does black. I mean, he can bring the rook to c1, he can play bishop to g4, hoping to trade off on f3 and putting this knight on f5. I mean, there are so many options available for both sides. I think it's not possible for me to cover all of them in this video. Anyways, there's one interesting trap in this short variation. If after the move bishop to f5, if white goes for the immediate h4, the aggressive h4. If black is not careful, black can also get his bishop trapped in this position. Say he plays the move e6, and after g4, bishop to e4, f3, and bishop back, and h5, black bishop is trapped. And this is one of the common traps which any player of the Caro Kann must be aware of. But anyways, this was the short variation of the Caro Kann defense. So there we are, the Caro Kann defense, the main ideas and development patterns for black, some of the variations which can occur in a game, and black's response to those. Hope you all have enjoyed the video, and if you have, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more, and also please feel free to post your insights in the comment box down below. And I'll see you soon. Thank you.